everyone. I'm Ashley Kornblatt, and I serve on the Chamber of Commerce board. And we have started this process of chamber chats. That's what we're calling them. And they are just 1 hour Zoom calls where we go over a topic. And it's meant to be an opportunity to have a more casual discussion about the topic and to compile questions from businesses and other folks. And then if we don't have the expertise to answer those questions on this call, we will do a little research and get back to everyone. We are going to do a couple of calls, at least 2 or 3 probably, on the TRT tax. So this is really just a learning opportunity and a chance to ask questions. And we may not be able to answer them all today because we just have an hour, but we will track those questions and do our best to get answers to everyone in the future. So no decisions, no votes, nothing like that. What we're doing today is just discussing how the TRT tax works, where we are with it, and planning some future discussions about it. So that is our plan. And we have a couple speakers. Chris Baird is going to go over the reports from the past. And then August is going to bridge us a little bit more to the future. No, he's going to look at some past stuff as well. But our goal is to get to the point that we are talking about future plans, but we want everyone to understand how the tax works and how the law works and where we are with it before we move on to the future. So history and then discussion. And then we hope in the next couple of calls to be talking about future opportunities and what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Chris. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
And do you hear me? Yeah, you're a little bit far away, but we can hear you. And do you want to share your screen, or should we? Yeah. That'd be great.
So, yeah, I'll start off with just sort of the context of some of the recent transient room tax collections as compared with historical growth rates. So what we're looking at right now actually is all of our sales taxes combined, these graphs. And so on the left, we see 3 different graphs. One's for 2020, 2021, and then 2022. The blue line is basically a trend projection using data from 2012 through 2019. So, if you tried to draw a line as best you could across all the peaks of these, and then project it out to 2021, 2022, et cetera, that's what this blue line is doing. And, the value of this is that the last couple of years has been so wild. We had a really very low year in 2020, first year that we've actually seen decreases in sales tax revenue, really since we started down the tourism road over about 25 years ago, at least in the county's involvement. And then 2021 was one of the highest growth years that we've ever seen since we started engaging in tourism. And so this blue line has given us an indication of where we're at relative to average growth from 2012 2019. If the orange line is below the blue line, that means we're not performing as well as we were. And if it's above it, it means we're performing better. And so you can see 2020 here, all taxes combined. The COVID closures show major losses. Then by about July and August seemed to be sort of flat in 2020, and then by September it bounced up above those projections and pretty much stayed that way all the way to the present. And by present, I mean April. So one of the things to realize is our taxes lag by 2 months, and so April's the last month that I have data for. You see July, it dipped down. That's likely because of fires, really poor visibility and a lot of smoke. So that's probably the reason why July dipped down. But other than that, we've seen very strong growth. And then, so moving up to the transient room tax specifically, got it at the top here. You can see that beginning in January, February, and March, we were a little bit above average growth. Then in April, for whatever reason, we jumped up quite a bit above the average growth. So April's transient room tax collections were almost 20% above 2021's and more than double the amount that we collected for April of 2019. Quite a lot of growth in a short period of time on the transient room tax. And so this, you can see total transient room tax collections over the years. You see it was a fairly steady kind of linear growth trend up to about 2019, then dropped way down in 2020 because of COVID, and then jumped way back up in 2021. And then this graph right here is showing how the actual, and the actuals are in orange, compare with, the trended projections. And so in 2020, it was much lower, 2021, much higher. Thus far, TRT-wise, we're about 41% above that average growth trend. So still performing pretty strong, at least up through April. I've heard, some anecdote that it's dropped off quite a bit since then. So, but I won't be able to plug those numbers in until we get them. We usually get our sales tax information around the 22nd through the 26th or so of the month. That's when I'll update this and send it back out to everybody. So that's just setting the stage for how we're doing relative to average growth rates over the years, performing really quite strongly. Now let me just switch over to our 2021 Tourism Taxes report. I'm just going to kind of go over this in general, and then if y'all have specific questions, we can kind of get into more detail later. So the way that the transient room tax is broken up statutorily at this point is that 37% of the transient room tax can go towards economic development activities, which include tourism promotion, recreation, film and conventions, as well as economic diversification. 63% could go towards impact mitigation. And so as some of you might be aware, there's a base year requirement for the economic development portion, and that's relative to the amount that was spent in the state's fiscal year, 2018-2019. That amounts to $2.6 million. But 37% is greater than that. So at this point, we're obligated to send this $3.2 million figure to the economic development portion. And so in 2021, we brought in almost $8.8 million in transient room tax. We started off with a fund balance from 2020 of about 1.5 million. Then there's also included in a lot of this is also non-TRT funding like state grants, also some Thompson Welcome Center money, interest earnings, etc. So the statute changed in 2021, and so it imposed some restrictions actually on how some of this money can be spent. So one of the restrictions is that no more than 1/5 of this number here, this 3.2 million, can go towards establishing and promoting recreation, film, or conventions. And so that's that number right there. That's the maximum amount that we can spend on those particular type of activities. And then it also restricts us so that we can only spend 1/3, up to 1/3 of this amount
Chris,
on economic.
We can't see your screen right now. I just realized.
Oh, sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Sorry, let me bring that back up.
Yeah. The technology works great right up until it doesn't, right?
Yeah. So carrying back in, just to review this, kind of moving from the top to the bottom, here's the total TRT collections. This is the opening balance, the money that is in this fund carrying over from 2020 for both the impact mitigation and economic diversification. Then we have this TRT revenue here, this 3.2 million is the 37% that's going to economic development activities. And then getting back, so you see we've got 1/5 limit on how much we can spend on rec, film, and conventions. This is where we fund our Trail Ambassador program and our film commission out of. Next up, we've got no more than 1/3 of this amount, this 3.2 million, can be spent on economic diversification activities. And then the minimum amount that needs to be spent on tourism promotion is about 46.33%. So this is the amount that needs to go toward tourism promotion. And then moving down the line here, we've got the actual expenditures for 2021. So we spent 978, almost 979,000 on tourism promotion, 180,000 on recreation, almost 78,000 on film, 44,000 on the Moab Information Center, and 134,000 on economic diversification. So we brought in more money than we spent, which means that the fund balance went up. And so in divvying up how this fund balance needs to be spent moving into this year and into the future, this 1.475 million is carrying over from 2020 before the state law changed. Then divvying up the remainder of what was there, we've got 495,000 that needs to be spent on tourism promotion, 392,000 that can be spent on rec, film, or conventions, and 949 or almost 950,000 on economic diversification activities. So August will go over in more detail his plans for all this spending, plus what we have been spending. Then on the other side of the equation here, we've got the impact mitigation, which is the 63%. That comes up to about 5.5 million. And 300,000 goes towards search and rescue, about 102,000 to the museum, 4.8 million towards offsetting law enforcement costs. Total law enforcement costs is a little over 6 million. Solid waste services, 300,000, and Thompson Fire, 24,100. So this, the main advantage really of this is that it offsets what would normally have to be spent by raising property taxes. And so it also has the added benefit, of freeing up some unrestricted money that we have used for affordable housing and for a lot of other important needs. One of the big detriments, I think, in any reduction in transient room tax is that it would force us to use unrestricted monies like property taxes to pay these bills instead, which causes a need for property tax increases sooner. Grand County has only had to do one general operation property tax increase in 15 years, and the reason that we've not had to do property tax increases very often is because of the transient room tax's contribution to these expenses. And then moving on to the TRCC. The TRCC is a combination of the restaurant tax and the car rental tax. We opened the year with about $240,000 in the bank, brought in about $895,000 in restaurant tax and $632,000 in car rental tax. And then the expenditures in 2021, $13,722 went to Star Hall. Normally we would fund the airport's debt service out of this, but we got a grant from CARES Act grant. So that's going to cover airport debt for a few years, and so we won't have to use TRCC for that. And then TRCC is also funding our 2 convention centers and cultural centers. We got the Grand Center and Old Spanish Trail Arena, which are being funded by the TRCC. And then the fireworks display, part of the fireworks display is being paid for from TRCC as well. So again, the expenses were a little less than revenue, and so the fund balance went from $240,000 to about $406,000. That's just a quick overview of these reports, and like I say, if you have questions, I don't know if we want to take them now or let August go first on filling in some of the details on this spending.
I think for the purpose of time, it would be good to go ahead and let August go. And then, so if you have a question, jot it down. We want to come back to it, but some of the questions might be answered by what August talks about. So we're going to keep pushing forward. August, you ready to go? You're on mute. There you go.
Yes, I'm just going to get my slides up here.
Sure. So yeah, definitely keep track of any questions that you have. We should have time to answer them. And if we don't, we're going to answer them in the next session. So we're committed to getting everyone up to speed so we all know kind of where we are and why we are where we are. That's the goal. Always a good thing to do as an outfitter, know where you are, right?
There you go. It's giving me a hard time trying to get into presentation mode. Give me 1 second.
No worries. Take your time. So we haven't scheduled the next chamber chat, but it'll be in the next couple weeks. Oh, and we're going to be bringing on a little more expertise from the travel side, because I think that one of the things to remember about all of this is it isn't just us working on this. You know, the state has a massive tourism effort that works on all of these issues, and we are very much part of that. And so it's just bigger than us, and we learn from them and get a lot of resources from them. Okay, so August, you ready to go?
Yeah, can everybody see my screen all right?
Yeah, your presentation just went away though. You're back to your Google. There you go. There it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So I also had some prep for the 2020 numbers, so we can go into that if there's questions. So let me skip that in. So I wanted to start off by just kind of providing some more context.
And you need to be just slightly louder if you can be, Austin.
I just got to move my mic up.
There we go. Perfect. Now you're perfect.
I love being perfect. Okay. So let's take a look at each of these line items and try to, I'm going to try to kind of explain what goes into each of these categories. So in 2021, just under $1 million was spent kind of in that tourism promotion category. I'll kind of go top down from largest expense to smallest expense here. So that advertising expenditures were about $500,000. So that is actual placements of digital, legacy, magazine, etc. Advertisements, and it also includes the creation of content for those advertisements. So whether that's making a video or putting together a actual piece of creative content, that's all in there. Salary and benefits, that pays our staff to do the good job that they do to make all of this happen. Overhead kind of captures utilities, fees, printing, paper, you know, all of those things that aren't that allow us to do what we do, but aren't necessarily directly tied to any specific program necessarily. In terms of professional services, that is our consultants, contractors that we work with. At the moment, we have Love Communications as our media agency of record. Adam Whalen is on the line today and can speak to any data questions that people have if that comes up. So we pay them to do a lot of this work, and other contractors or consultants to help on data analysis or industry, understanding what's happening in the industry. Trade shows, we go quite frequently. Melissa Stocks kind of is our specialist in this at the moment, and she goes to various conferences where buyers of tours who might be based in the UK or India and are looking at, should I set up a product in the Moab area for my clientele? And they set up and they speak with Melissa, and Melissa educates them as to the Moab area and kind of tries to share what's the magic in our area. FAM tours is really small. Last year, practically non-existent, but historically that's bringing journalists to town, kind of industry people, to allow us to help educate the market as to what's happening in our area. And then regional promotion, these are both kind of really small, but we cooperate with other areas such as Bryce Canyon, San Juan County, et cetera, in certain promotional packages. We also have under this recreation tab, so I don't manage this super directly, but this is that carve out of TRT. In 2021, that total of 180,000 got divvied up into youth recreation. So that was a contribution to the Recreation Special Service District, the Art Trails program that puts all of those sculptures around town, the Responsible Recreation Program in its very infancy. So that's helping to put trail ambassadors at the trailhead and educate visitors how to recreate responsibly when they are in the Moab area. And then a contribution to support the microtransit program with the city. In terms of film, this is in 2021, which is a contribution to the city or the film commission. And then this was our contribution to the MIC in 2021. So that helps to support their operations as well as keep the bathrooms open after hours, as it is the only public bathroom on Main Street. So we think that's an important thing for visitors to have access to. In terms of economic diversification, last year that was just salaries, salaries and benefits. We had no programming running last year, but I was hired as the first economic diversification staff member. We had a Vista, and then I moved to the director role, and Ben took over that role. So that's basically just paying Ben and I to do the good work that we're doing. And I can kind of speak to what's in the current budget and some plans for this year and the rest of the year. I also have some data that I can have Adam speak to. I'm happy to, Ashley, what do you think? Ask questions on the past reports first, or kind of keep chugging along?
Well, maybe, yeah, let's see if there are questions on the past.
Okay.
So if you stop sharing, and then Lacey, if everyone's unmuted from your side, if anyone has questions about the past, anything about the past, chime in, and if we can't answer them now, we will work to answer them later. I mean, I think the bottom line is that we're in a pretty good place in terms of we have some money to work with, which is always better than not having money to work with. And so, I think there's lots of different reasons why we are where we are, and the way the law is written, and what choices we really have with spending it. And, the Travel Council's done amazing work in the past. And then, I think sometimes we get a little reactionary. So that's one thing we're looking at is that I've been thinking about is how can we be slightly more consistent with sort of long-term branding of Moab. So that's something we're thinking about, that we want to talk more about, like keeping the long-term brand maintained, and then maybe special campaigns that add to that kind of thing. But so anyway, those are just some of the thoughts. But if anyone has a question, just raise your hand or chime right in. And this is not your only chance. There'll be other chamber chats. And so as you think about this, if something comes up, let us know. Maybe I'm not seeing any hands or hearing anyone piping up. So I think, August, you should keep going.
Works for me. Okay.
Okay.
And can I just say real quick, so it won't let me unmute you. If you want to talk, you can go ahead and unmute yourself down there on the left-hand side where it says mute or unmute. You can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, feel free to jump right in. If you think of something, jump in.
Okay, so I'll do a quick overview of the 2020 budget and speak to some of the programs that we have in the works this year. So this is what is in the 2022 tourism promotion budget generally. I did pull out the salary and benefits line because we have to calculate that based off of how much time staff spent on the economic diversification work versus the tourism promotion work, and we haven't done that math yet. So rather than having a false number, I just pulled that section out for reference. So currently we have about 500, a little under 600,000 dedicated to advertising this year. To break that down a little bit more, we spent about 200 grand on a digital Arches Timed Entry visitor education campaign this spring. And we are planning to do a $300,000 fly-in kind of campaign that we got money from the state to work on last year. And so that'll be launching this summer through the fall, to the end of this year. It sounds like somebody might be unmuted.
There we go. It's fine.
Okay. Under professional services, we have a lot of really great partners that we're planning to work with this year or have already started to work with, whether that's Love Communication, or there's a lot of really great data vendors out there that are helping us understand our tourism economy kind of better than we ever have before. So we're doing a lot of work with them. We're also working with some researchers at USU to help us understand our visitation numbers better and the impact of timed entry and Utah Raptor State Park on visitor behavior in our area, so that we can have a better understanding of how to work with those visitors and understand the impacts of those federal and state land management decisions on our tourism economy. We've got this overhead line. Again, that's just basic operational expenses. Other tourism promotion, that includes those trade shows, FAM tours, reprinting brochures, all of that good stuff. We have two new big programs. One that has happened in the past, this is the event grant program. So this is to create and support either existing or new events that bring visitation to key weekends during the calendar year. We've allocated some of that already, but there's about a little under 20 grand allocated for the rest of this year that we'll be planning to give out before the fall. And then the MOAB grant, which is marketing our awesome businesses. This is a $5,000 or less grant for small tourism businesses to help them kind of get their own slice of the pie locally. And so that application just opened actually on July 1st, and there's a webinar on how to apply on Friday, actually. So if you're not on our email list and you haven't gotten that information, or just call our office and talk to Ben and he'll give you all the information there. But the total spend is approximately $1 million here. This does not include the reserve money. So this is just what was budgeted at the end of last year, what's in what I can spend like tomorrow. Those budget reserve numbers that you saw, we can add and augment and kind of build off of these programs. And I think, Chris has asked to me is we need to spend this money because there's a reserve limit. So if there's things that you're seeing that you're really excited about us working on and pursuing, please let us know so we can expand some of the programs that we already have in the works here. I should mention something I'm really excited about is to do a little bit more planning. So I think doing a tourism strategic plan that takes into account, how can we ensure that tourism is benefiting the community, its local businesses, and providing a good stewardship for our local environment is something that I'm really excited about. There's some really good consultants who are experts. And we're not alone as a community facing these issues. And so that's some of the work that I'd like to put some of that reserve money towards, is some more planning, revamping the branding, revamping our creative, and really making sure that we have a really wonderful presence in all our target markets, as well as making sure that we're educating our visitors very responsibly and all of those important things. On the economic diversification side, the big program this year is the STAR grant. So that's a sustainable and resilient grant. So we have allocated $500,000 to this. Again, that just launched on last Friday, and there will be a webinar on this Friday to learn more about it and how to apply. That's really looking at businesses that rely less on tourism visitation, are already established, and have an opportunity to expand. Perhaps they're bursting at the seams, and they need to build a new shop space, and they can hire another staff person. But this is really trying to aim towards having more year-round, high-paying, benefited jobs in the community, and starting with who we already have and trying to expand those. We have $100,000 dedicated to workforce development. That's still being workshopped with our Economic Development Advisory Board. We're really thinking about how can we connect our opportunities in our community to workforce, as well as our local community to opportunities wherever they may be, maybe online or otherwise. Kind of similar to that strategic plan that I spoke about before for tourism, we're going to do the same thing for economic development generally, with a focus on economic diversification, so that we have a game plan for the next 3 years to execute as a department and as a community. Something that Chris didn't touch on is that the statutory changes that allow us to spend transient room tax money on economic diversification sunsets automatically in 2026. So my job really is to make this money work, provide community benefits, and show up to the legislature in the fall, or excuse me, at the 2026 legislative session with a convincing case why they should continue to allow our community to spend this money in this way. And I think the other side of that is to ensure that our visitor economy is still healthy, and that we can get along efficiently with the amount of money that we're still getting from the transient room tax for the tourism promotion side. And then lastly, a marketing budget to make sure that we can get this information out to people, create events, have lunch and learns, do all that good stuff. Again, there is more money in the reserves than what's budgeted, so we can expand and augment and experiment as we continue on. One quick pitch is that we do have some board vacancies for the Economic Development Advisory Board. We're doing interviews tomorrow afternoon. And if you're interested, let me know. We're accepting applications till the end of the day. And we'll try to get people scheduled for an interview tomorrow afternoon if you want to get involved in all this good work that we're doing here in the county. That's all I have. We have Adam Whalen from Love Communications, who could speak a little bit to some of the tourism visitation statistics, if people are interested in that and what we're thinking about and how we're going to be shifting our marketing to address what we're seeing in terms of travel trends, and kind of some forward-looking indicators. Obviously, we have our tax revenues from April, but that's a lagging indicator. And if we're looking at the most up-to-date visitation occupancy numbers, that gives us a good idea of what those tax numbers might look like in the coming months. Ashley, does that sound like something that'd be interesting? I'd be happy to take questions on my piece first.
Yeah, let's do a couple quick questions on your piece. I'm gonna start. Can you just explain what the STAR grant is really briefly, just so everyone knows?
Yeah. So the STAR grant is it's short for Sustainable and Resilient. So really the entire intention of the economic diversification program is to ensure that our economy is more resilient and more sustainable. And in part, that is addressing the fact that we do have such a strong, the percentage of our economic activity that is directly correlated to visitation is quite high. And if we want to have resilience as a community when we have these economic recession indicators that we're experiencing right now, we want to not have that drop in our gut feeling. We want to be like, well, we have these other industries, these other businesses that are not so tied to this visitation statistic, and so that our employing base is going to be continual on a year-round basis.
Yeah. So, but the STAR grant is a grant to pay for jobs that are not in the tourism industry. Is that right? Or is
that would be like the super simplification?
Okay.
But I would say that like there's businesses that I think serve visitors that could qualify. For example, if you're on Main Street and you sell an artisan good, and you get most of your revenue from tourism traffic, you could apply to the STAR grant and say, hey, I'm looking to start up an e-commerce platform, get a social media platform, go to a bunch of markets outside of Moab and try to get use Moab as a brand. We're selling Moab by selling whatever my artisan good is, but it doesn't rely on someone physically coming to our community on any given day.
So it's meant to promote diversification, but it has flexibility, and it even could promote diversification within a more tourism related business. Okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
So really there's ideal outcomes. So, we're trying to either increase pay for existing jobs, increase benefits for existing jobs, create new jobs, increase underlying business, productivity,
Yeah.
And there's also opportunities for organizations that might be nonprofits, but still employ locals above median wage that just have a capacity constraint and they need
Sure.
to build out in order to provide services, which allow them to get grant money and fund their
Okay, that's
payroll.
great. I just wondered also, for the webinar that's happening on Friday, is it going to be recorded? And can you, well, one, could you put a link to the invite or whatever in the chat for folks here? And then can you, if you record it, can you share it with the chamber and we can put it out there as far as those marketing grants for local businesses, right? That's what you said.
Yes to both. Ben,
Okay.
Ben, do you want to speak to that briefly? Ben is going to be running that webinar.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
great.
So the answer is yes, it will be recorded. The plan is for me to talk for about 45 minutes from 9 to 10:30, and that will leave 30 to 45 minutes for questions for whoever is online. But yes, the session is going to be recorded and posted. I can't share the link right now just because I'm having some trouble with it, but we just posted about it in Facebook today and we put it in an email yesterday. If you go to grandcountyutah.net/grants, the link will be very easy to find right there on Friday morning at the latest. I'm trying to get it working right now. I'm just having some technical difficulties, so I don't want to put it out there and confuse people. But grandcountyutah.net/grants is where you'll be able to find it.
Okay, and Lacey, you can what time is it then again on Friday?
It's going to be 9 to 10:30 on Friday morning.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, the chamber can send it out again too, hopefully, because I think that's a really great program because it, there's always tension between promoting Moab in general and promoting Moab to specific in terms of come and go, do this here or that here, and keeping that balance is really important. And I think this program is a great way to do that. But okay, does anyone else have questions on what August has been talking about so far? Let us know, raise your hand, pipe up. Just jump right in. Let's see. But otherwise,
I'm just quickly, you mentioned
Yeah,
that you're going to have a fly-in. What you said it right at the beginning, and I was confused as to what was coming in.
Yeah, I can clarify. Good question, Karen. Okay, so basically, I should take a step back and explain the context for that, which is that the State Office of Tourism has a cooperative marketing grant program. And so basically every year we can apply to get up to 250 grand of grant money that we match with TRT money. So basically getting a 2-for-1, turning a $250,000 marketing campaign into a $500,000 marketing campaign. It's an annual thing. We've done it almost every year since the program was created. And we work really closely with the Love team to think through what's happening in the market, what's happening, who are our target audiences, how are we going to target them, and we basically apply to the state and say, here's our campaign, please fund us, we think this is a good use of money. We're in the middle of that right now for next year's program. I'm going to be up in Salt Lake actually next Monday to interview for the grant committee with Adam. But last year we applied and we received $150,000 from the state that we're going to match with $150,000 of TRT money. And the application there was really targeting trying to get people to fly in to Canyonlands Regional using Salt Lake and Denver as kind of gateways. And that was the target markets there was Chicago with the thought that they have one additional flight. They have a reasonably long length of stay relative to other markets, and they have a reasonably high spend, basically. And then we also were looking at the Salt Lake market. Now, for the application we did this year, we widened that, and I think that's largely in response to what we're seeing in the travel trend indicators, which is showing that visitors are decreasing the number of trips they're taking. They are, basically decreasing the radius within which they're traveling as well. So we increased the number of markets and really targeted, our top, I can't remember, top 6 or 7 areas that have high length of stays, high spends, and really trying to get them to fly into Moab, not only to support the airport who gets kind of fees every time they get more service, but also that makes the business case for SkyWest to keep those flights, and encouraging them to continue to apply for that emergency air service funding from the federal government, because getting those flights, filling those flights to Moab has a pretty high multiplier. You have to get to town, you have to stay somewhere. You're not going to be camping on BLM land in your toy hauler because you can't fly in with it. So the idea is that you spend more if you're coming from farther. You're also going to spend more, and that really trying to push them and educate them about the responsible recreation element of Moab throughout that entire process. So, but for this year, we have $300,000. We're probably going to shift those markets to reflect what we applied for this year, launch that by, sometime July, August, and that'll run throughout the rest of this year. And then we have, if we get the money from the state, we'll have a pretty similar campaign for about $500,000 that will run pretty much right after Christmas, right when people are starting to think about the new year. Maybe they got some vacation travel money from grandma, and then run that, I believe, right until the next application window next June. And Adam can correct me on anything I missed up there. Does that answer your question, Karen? And please ask me if I missed anything.
I'm just curious, do you have to get this approved by the commission? Isn't this the same grant that when Elaine was here that the commission denied going for this grant money?
Yeah, so in 2019, we didn't apply for it, and that was that
Okay.
process. But in 2021, last summer, the commission did approve this grant process, and they did approve the application for this upcoming year as well. And that's, I think, really because we're trying to ensure that one really important piece of this is that we worked with Love last year to do an audience segmentation survey and try to kind of figure out what traveler type is most likely to kind of be minimally impactful on the environment when they're coming here, more likely to be interested in leave no trace ethics, et cetera, spend more time in town, spend more on goods and services, rent more stuff, stay in hotels. And we've been using that segmentation as the basis within these target markets. And so that on top of like the messaging of responsible recreation, I think is helping to ease some of those concerns about just saying targeting everybody everywhere to come to Moab, but being a little bit more focused with the advertising.
Sure. That addresses that concern I was having, or that I was trying to express about general versus specific. But someone whose name is only iPhone has their hand up. So I wanted to take that question, and then I wanted to go to the last presentation, right, August? Because we can do just a few minutes with that.
Yeah, Adam's got some good statistics that you can share.
Yeah, I would love to show those, because those are going to generate other questions that we can also, answer in our next call. But who is labeled iPhone? And you have your hand up, and please jump in. Or maybe.
So if you're on a cell phone, you have to hit *6 to unmute.
There you go. Good. Okay.
Hi, guys. Apologies. If I missed this part of the meeting, this is Lori McFarland. If I missed this in the beginning, I will just listen to what was recorded. But I don't see an overall marketing strategy that we're following for 2022 other than grants. I don't see any marketing to bring new visitors into Moab, which is my understanding. There's legislation and there's mandates in the state that say we have to use some of that money to do that. And other than the Love communication, help me see what our marketing strategy is to help with that.
Yeah, great question. So as I was saying, I think at this point we've been kind of campaign by campaign. So I think there's kind of two parts to my answer. One is that I think the grant applications that are augmenting the budget that we already have to do these fly market advertising campaigns with that Love Communications is helping us craft that we're launching this fall and that we're going to be doing next year. You know, those are very targeted at bringing the kinds of visitors that we're identifying as the kind of visitors we want to have come here. And that's certainly visitation inducing, but it's not saying, it's not a everyone should come to Moab type message. You know, it's very targeted. And on the other hand, when it comes to doing overall brand awareness, overall branding, what is Moab? What are we telling to the visitor through all of the channels that we can possibly use outside of a targeted campaign? That's something I'm really thinking about and focusing on developing for this next budget cycle. So for example, we don't have a strategic plan. To your point, you know, a marketing plan, I think, is one outcome of a strategic plan, but we don't have, haven't had a process as a community with the stakeholders all involved to say, okay, really, what are we trying to do with our tourism economy collectively? Because, you know, we kind of need that as a department in order to craft what is the messaging, what is the creative, what do we have our new logo, what is our branding, and then start to do that awareness type messaging, because we're doing very targeted, you know, come visit Moab campaigns. But, you know, in terms of having social media, paid posts that's just kind of floating out there talking about the Moab brand to get people to think about it and have brand awareness, or if that's on websites that we're targeting specific audiences, that's not you know, it's not a super targeted campaign, but it's generally, here's the Moab brand. We don't have that running right now.
So that, and I think,
so that's,
well, sorry, go ahead, August.
no, I was just saying that that's certainly a gap I've identified in the 10 months or so that I've been doing this job, that, you know, we don't have a cohesive message at the moment. And that's whatever that message is, we need to figure out. And that's something I do want to work on. And we have money to do that for sure.
Hey, August, we also did spend, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did spend some during the beginning of the year marketing come to Moab and get your arches timed entry reservation. We kind of coupled.
Yeah.
So that was one campaign that is spent.
Yeah, that was
year.
$200,000, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct. Yep.
So,
Right.
so Lori, I think one of the things we're trying to do is at this round for this hour, we were trying to kind of bring everyone up to speed and look at the past, because a lot of people had questions about sort of how we got to this moment. But you are right. The next step is, what do we, you know, the good news is we have some money. And I think there is, what we're trying to figure out is we've been a little bit too much sort of pendulum swinging, right? Like no advertising, only talk about responsible or go crazy advertising, or, you know, if you go look back all the way to the Mighty Five campaign, it's been kind of back and forth. And so what we're looking at and what August is really asking, and what the Chamber's trying to promote this conversation about, is what should be the longer term plan, and how do we get the right balance so that we aren't sort of pendulum swinging. I mean, the pandemic made some things really challenging, obviously. Like, it was silly to spend a bunch of money when nobody was traveling. And it was hard to know when exactly that was going to stop. So there's a lot of different things that, you know, if you'd known exactly this or that, we might have been able to plan. But I think your point is really good. And that is what we are working to have a productive conversation about. Like, what does a more sort of long-term brand maintenance campaign look like? And then how would you supplement that with more of these specific ones? So
are we open as a community to continuing with a company we've invested a lot of dollars with, so they could get to know our demographic? I mean, I know we're using Love Communications for the fly in, fly out, but it seems like they used to do a lot of that marketing strategy help, rather than, you know, just, I know some people are really dedicated to using organically artisans that are in our community to do that, but we've invested a lot as a community. with Love to try to get some of those strategies and a little more sophisticated, maybe focusing on, like Costa Rica looks at what are we doing that's eco-friendly? What are we doing that's showing us as being forward thinking, and maybe incorporate that into our marketing strategy? Are we open to that, August?
Yeah, absolutely. So I should say that the contract we just inked with Love is a multi-year it's opt-in renewal on a multiple year basis to do marketing strategy, media planning, and media buying. But it includes options. Basically, it allows us to pursue for all of these other things when it comes to website, branding, creative, etc. Love does have those capacities, but my goal is really to get who's the best, right? And I think Adam's aware of this, but who is the best possible creative agency that can help us develop these, the actual media collateral that's getting put before eyeballs. And if Love is the best for that, then we'll go ahead and do that. So there's a couple different services that I'm looking to contract out to kind of put together, an agency team basically that includes creative, that includes all of the above. But Love is absolutely going to be on our team at the very least when it comes to strategy, media planning, and media buying.
And I would just add that, the heart of your question there, Lori, was, are we as a community ready to do this? Or how are we looking at this as a community? And that's what these chats are about. And we're going to do another couple of rounds of them, really talking about that question, because I think that if we, August is taking all the tools he has at his disposal and doing what he can, and there's a lot, but I think that having this opportunity for more community input to think through this, I think is really important. And that's why we're having these conversations. So when you say, do we as a community agree on this? I would say maybe not quite yet, but we hope that through some more conversations we can, which is a perfect tee up to let's hear the stats that we have about what we know about our visitors. That would be the perfect wrap up to this call. And then we'll let you guys know as soon as we schedule another call in the next couple of weeks to really dive more into your question, Lori, because that is part of the problem. The more the community can discuss this, and then the more we can convey sort of different perspectives and get sort of a consensus to August, the better off we're going to be.
Actually, if I may, I just would hope that the Economic Development Department is going to include the information, because there's been a huge expense at the county and at the city to do strategic planning. And I hope that it's incorporated with what is happening. We're not going through a study and spending,
No, not we're not hiring a consultant or doing a big new planning. We're building on all of that. But I think what we've seen is there's just different businesses in the community that are really in the loop, and others who haven't heard, and others who are concerned about different things. And we're trying to put out enough information that everyone can get to the same sort of general set of facts. And then we can have a more productive conversation about where we're going forward. So no plans to re-strategize. We want to use the work that was already done. So
yeah, and I want to be clear on that specific point, which is that within the county's general planning process, one of the gaps is the economic development plan. So that component, going out to RFP, really looking at our commercial land, figure out what's preventing us from developing how we want to develop. And maybe part of that is that we just don't have enough affordable land for commercial development, and having consultants help us identify what our opportunities are, and doing that kind of stakeholder engagement. But that's a part of the general plan, basically.
Piece. Yeah, a piece. Yeah. But
then,
all right, let's not go there on this, because I want to be really respectful of people's time, because I'm promising to keep chamber chats to an hour. So let's hear the stats, and then we will definitely let everyone know what we decide, what date we're going to reconvene and how we're going to start to go through that question. Because Lori, that question that you asked was really important. But so August. Or
okay,
Adam.
you give it to me.
Actually,
I give it to Adam.
You're telling us this.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
pass the ball around. Yeah, and I promise I can keep this very brief. So I was told just a quick 5-minute update. And what I should clarify that I'll be presenting today is just some industry trends. So a little background in talking with August is this is something we put together every 2 to 4 weeks that basically synthesizes a few data sources. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And so what you're going to see is a lot of information that's going to be a lot broader to the larger travel industry. And then what we tend to do in coordination with August's team, so I work really closely with Ben, is how does this properly synthesize with, say, our STR reports, some of our occupancy rates? What do we know about our own visitors, right? So what I'm going to run through is a very truncated version of the state of the travel industry at large. So these presentations tend to be 40 or 50 slides. I know we're cognizant of time, so this one's a solid 9. Don't worry, I'm not going to put everyone through that pain. So this is going to be very quick, high level, going through the state of travel. And to be honest with you, we're observing this at both the state level with, the state of Utah and the Utah Office of Tourism, but also nationally, reasons for concern, but some reasons for optimism. So what you're seeing on the right is the variety of data sources we use. A lot of these tend to be survey-based, but that is why we tend to synthesize it with the real-world data sources that Ben and August's team are collecting through various data partners. So the first thing to note is a general question about the economy. So obviously we're all in the know about inflation and essentially a coming recession. And you are seeing a pretty large spike, as you're seeing in that red line, of folks that are anxious about the economy. And we know from past recessions that this has a direct correlation on travel, right? And so the reason we layer this type of survey data on top of the real world occupancy rates we see is this tends to be looking more into the future, so we can kind of forecast a little more sufficiently than just looking at single data sources. So this is from a different data source. And so we can pass along and distribute this, either the full version or the truncated version. But in the bottom left of every slide is the data source we're using. And it's a variety of different surveys, so we don't fall into any one survey bias. And what we're seeing is that 62% of results are already feeling a period of economic contraction, with 19% believing we're heading toward one. So that's well over 80% of the population. But what we obviously care about is how does this impact travel, right? And so what you're seeing here are 2 graphs. The left is if folks' plans have been affected by increased prices. And on the right is specifically for summer travel plans, how have they been impacted? And what you're seeing, kind of focusing on the right chart here, is a lot of people are self-reporting that they'll spend less while traveling on food, activities, using alternative, or they will be using alternative transportation, or even picking a less expensive destination. So this isn't specific to Grand County, but it's worth noting, especially as we kind of monitor how we do over the summer in terms of ADRs and length of stays and occupancy rates, that folks are starting to kind of curtail how much they're willing to travel and spend while traveling. In fact, we noted here, this is a pretty good statistic. We just got this research last night, that you have just shy under of 40% have stated that inflation has led to them completely canceling an upcoming trip. So this kind of goes back to what August was mentioning about us wanting to focus on our key markets with long length of stays and spends, is if folks are taking less trips, we do want to make sure that when they do take a trip to Moab, it's a quality audience who's going to positively impact the community rather than pure volume. We have still noted, this is again some reasons for optimism, is that the amount of folks looking to take trips is still pretty high, right? You have 90% of people that are still have some sort of a travel plan. It may have just simply been changed in some capacity. The other big caveat here, it's another reason for concern, is gasoline prices. We know, and it particularly impacts Grand County, is obviously the idea of road trips, which is a bit of a mixed bag in terms of the quality of that traveler. But we are seeing this kind of lingering intent to potentially have fewer of those if gas prices continue to increase. So we've continued to see this kind of bump more and more as gas prices have risen across the country, although recently they have begun to drop. So we'll see how this is impacted in the data moving forward. But what we do note is, even with all of that kind of contraction and change, is that road trips are still expected to be the biggest summer trip type, which is pretty consistent with some past years, but it is above. But you do still see a pretty large surge in this traveling by flight, which is, again, the whole idea with some of these co-op programs we're enlisting in, is we know this is who we want to be attracting, but we do know that these folks are coming, and that's good intelligence to have. In terms of preferred travel destinations, if you look at just Western states, Utah is in the top 10. So something to note is we haven't really seen that fatigue of outdoor recreation. It still maintains as an area of interest to hit national parks, to go to state parks even, right? Particularly among the Western states, as we see when we can segment this data. And then the preference for active vacations. This goes back to the idea of national and state parks increasing, right? We have 50% of people who want to take an active vacation versus a downtime vacation. So what this would qualify as is hiking, any activities with, say, ATVs, OTVs, something like climbing, anything a little more rigorous. And then the last few thing here, I believe this is the last slide, is this does go both ways. What we are showing is from American travelers internationally, but we have seen a bit of an increase in international travel. And I know Ben has some of this data on what we're seeing on that in the revenue figures, but we are seeing that start to tick back up, especially with some of these COVID-19 vaccine requirements being dropped, and that just tending to be a growing market. So I know that was very fast, very high level. As you can see, there's a couple of things we're monitoring that are both good and bad. But there is the more robust version, which, again, I promise not to share in the interest of time. So happy to answer any questions, though, about the methodology, the specific numbers I shared. And obviously, those can all be shared with anyone who would like to see them after this as well.
All right. That was super helpful, Adam. And I think that, the purpose of these chamber chats is to bring everyone up to speed and to get input from everyone who wants to put input in. And so I think this was a really good start. I really appreciate Chris's presentation and August and Adam's. Those were all really helpful. And the good news is, I think we have some resources to spend between now and the end of the year, both through those grants and in some type of campaign that we have the opportunity to do, but also that I think we have the opportunity to start looking a little long-term and trying to get all of this to go on a little more even keel instead of so up and down. So be thinking about all that. Be thinking about what channels have worked for your business or that you think would be helpful, because I think that's a big challenge in today's marketing world is getting to the right channels. And so because you can spend a lot of money fast and not get the results that you want. So we want to get the experts and get everyone's advice on that. And then we want to spend some money because we have some. I think that's the overall theme. And I think that we all want to make sure that we protect the thing that makes Moab great. So keeping the backcountry protected and having visitors going to the right place is a really important part of what we need to do. And I think that is going really pretty well right now. So, but all right, well, so I'm going to wrap us up for today, but please stay tuned. There'll be another chance to talk all about this and to ask any other questions. And feel free to send Lacey any questions or comments, but do remember she is not the complaint department. But just feel free to send her any questions and we'll be happy to work towards setting up other chamber chats to answer that. And the next one I think is about 2 weeks. We're going to have Natalie from the state business. I cannot remember her title. August, what is it? You're on.
She's the executive director
of the Utah Tourism Industry
Association.
Yeah, Utah Tourism Industry Association.
I should say that the focus there is making sure that everybody understands the actual tax law itself.
Yeah, that will be.
And that we're all on the same page as to how things can be spent, where the money comes from, the formulas, all of that good stuff.
We'll go into a deep dive on that, and then we'll probably schedule another one to talk more about this future campaign and what the plans between now and the end of the year. So,
and I think that'll be focused on the budget process for 2023 begins in September, and the Travel Council Advisory Board is the statutorily authorized body to advise the county on how to spend that money. Sure. And so, having a chamber chat to help the Travel Council Board make those and craft those recommendations will be really key to the process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the other thing we need to do is do more to educate everyone about the schedule of when these decisions get made. So we'll work on that. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for everyone who spoke. Really appreciate it. We want to keep making progress in this direction. And so let us know what you thought and have a good rest of the week. And great job, Lacey, on the 4th of July Chamber event at the park. Just a little plug. Okay. Take care, everyone.